I have a recollection of you and I meeting here 10 years ago. We were both working on our own ventures, and we sat down there and we talked about what you were doing. We talked about what I was doing. Any recollection of that?
I do. And in its own way, it was quite profound. Obviously, you're such a charismatic person, but it's profound in the sense that I think we've both had quite demanding but successful corporate careers. And yet here we found ourselves in this wonderful location talking very openly, as I recall, about these new ventures that we're starting. And it's not for the faint-hearted, as we might talk about a little bit later. It's a very brave thing to do. So I think in its way, it was quite memorable.
Do you remember what brought you here in the first place 10 years ago?
It's a beautiful building. It's the centre of London. And I think I came to have a number of meetings and to talk about the venture that I was starting with my co-founder.
It was a meeting place, but more importantly for the self-employed like me, it had the best and most accessible toilets in the city. And when you're self-employed and you've got no offices, you have to know where all these spaces are. Royal Exchange had one of the best of them. Now, referring back to your job, you had a big job, CIO, Hiscox, and yet you walked out of that and set up INSTANDA. What was the motivation for that?
I'd had a career spanning over 2 decades, and I really enjoyed my time at Hiscox, but it was, frankly, a personal issue with my boss, and that led to the decision for me to leave. But interestingly, the circles closed in a way because we do business with Hiscox. They're using our platform in Europe across a number of their countries. And now I'm really pleased to say that Bronick Macciarda, who was the CEO at the time, is now my strategic advisor, trying to keep me on the straight and narrow, as it were, for the future of insurance. So I'm delighted about that. But it was a moment in time. And I guess I have to be thankful for that moment. It didn't feel like it at the time, but it without it, INSTANDA wouldn't have been born.
It's a bit like those of my friends who made redundant. Most of them say they're very pleased they were made redundant because of some external influence that made them go and do the things that they always knew they wanted to do. Are you pleased you did it?
As you look at what you want to do in life and think and what fuels you, I guess a little bit like you, I was always a little bit rebellious at school. Headstrong, I think, was my school report said, even though I did very well. Ended up being deputy head boy, would you believe? So I was always this conflict between being a good citizen, but at the same time having a level of restlessness. And I think that's what fueled me to start INSTANDA with my co-founder. And I have absolutely zero regrets. It's been one of the most rewarding but demanding ventures that I've ever undertaken. And I think that in itself speaks volumes because you get a sense of real achievement. And I know the same is true for you too.
Yes, I had also issues at school. I wasn't very easy to teach. The word contrary comes up a lot. And I think if you don't take to authority easily, then one of the best ways you resolve it is to go off and create your own company where you don't necessarily have the same number of people to answer to. And once you do that, you can set up a company in your image, which has certain principles and makes money in ways that align with the way you want to make money. And you end up doing something you're passionate about, which makes getting up in the morning fundamentally easier. And so when you build up something quite substantial, you've built value for your shareholders with a team, co-founder Derek. What are you most proud about?
I think what we're most proud about is that, and again, I think it echoes very much what InsTech was about, which is that we set out to start a business and build something that nobody asked for. Nobody asked us to build the world's first no-code platform that put the power of the technology into the hands of the insurance community. No one asked for that. In fact, majority of people that we spoke to when we were doing our initial research believed it wasn't even possible. I mean, we love insurance, but it's also very, very complex and it's very diverse in terms of how it runs, particularly in commercial lines and specialty, which is where we're very strong. And so the pride comes from solving the problems for many insurers and MGAs and doing it in a way where they are put in control. And then that pride just gets amplified when we're dealing with clients, whether they're in Japan or Australia or Chile or the UK or the US, which is where we are now operating. And I think that transition from a vision, a sense of how to do things very differently, and then delivering it with all of our people globally, and then insurers using the platform for their broker network, for their own direct operations as well, it's remarkable. I always believed it was possible. I always believed it was the right thing to do. But I think when you start at the beginning, again, you find yourself as a lone voice, and very few people will say, yeah, go Tim, go get it. They would want to see it before they believe it, which I understand. But that takes a long time. And so you have to be fueled by a passion, as you say, to drive the idea that you have and the solution you've got to market.
Because most people go off and look at something that already exists and say, I could do it better.
Yeah.
I think when we started InsTech, it didn't exist or a thing. And we believed that if you pull together investors and entrepreneurs and progressive people in the insurance industry, you could help make things happen. But you didn't know. And you certainly didn't know whether it was a business. It just might be a thing of fun in the evenings. But it did turn into a business. From your point of view, it's a very brave thing to do, to say one of these things doesn't exist. This thing doesn't exist, but I'm sure if I built one, they would come. What made you think that this was, a thing that you would in future demand?
I watched the movie Field of Dreams, right? No, it was born out of a lot of deep insights. I think I've been fortunate that I'd had a history of running very complicated mission-critical systems in other industries before I joined Hiscox. And then I, up close, was with Hiscox, who, as I said, great company, but they had their challenges with technology, and I was able to solve a few of them. But some of those problems were intractable. And that's where I realized that, to your point, the existing model, the paradigm, if you like, of how to help the insurance community with technology simply was not working. And then when you realize that and get that insight, then you're left really with a poor me too option, or you think about the problem in a very different way and you start to really change the model. And that's what we did. It was incredibly difficult to build, but it was the only option, in my view, about how we were to move forward. And I couldn't see any other way of delivering what I passionately believed was the right thing. But inevitably, when you're doing something that's contrary, it takes time for people to start to believe it's true and it's possible and it's credible. And here we are 10 years later. I think credibility has been coming increasingly, but it's like one of those classic lines, you're an overnight success after 10 years of sweating and hard work.
Once you've gone into that space, there were quite a lot of others who entered in. It's now very competitive.
Yeah.
Your competitors have fallen by the wayside. What is it you think you've got right that they got wrong? What you've sought to do is difficult. It didn't exist before. You have to build it. Then you have to persuade people to use it. Then you have to build a company that scales and goes international. None of that's easy, and others who tried it have failed. What do you put that down to?
There is inevitably something about timing that make companies successful. And we can't ignore that. You look in history over those things that have come and gone. There's been lots of great ideas, but timing does have a part to play. And I think if you go back 10 years ago, 2015, that was the emergence of Insurtech, and there was a lot of expectation, there was a lot of promise. And so I think we were given some wind in our sails, so to speak, because increasingly larger insurance companies and particularly MGAs were thinking about where's this new technology that I can perhaps look at and use. And so we had that as some tailwinds, if you like. But that's not enough. The three things that we were fortunate, arguably you could say, by planning were, one, the design of the platform. So the way that we thought about how the platform should be used, the way it's been architected. So it's cloud native, it's a SaaS platform. Not one single client globally is on a different version of the code base. We have very limited technical debt, which is a big, big problem that impacts a lot of other big vendors. That's one thing. So the design, the architecture of our platform. The other thing I think was that we've fueled the business through a passion. We talked about that. But the way that we've gathered our teams and our people into this world, this journey that we're on, has given everybody a level of motivation and vigor, if you like, with when they're talking to our clients, talking to our prospects. And when you have that level of motivation in your company and people believe they're doing the right thing, which is very much how our people feel, that gives you another level of fueling.
I suspect you had a certain amount of pain along the way. What were the difficulties that you can share with us?
What do you mean, apart from selling my motorbike to make a payroll in the early years?
I know that feeling. You and I can swap stories here.
Putting the house on hock for the company, putting everything at risk. I think this isn't a sob story, so to speak, but I think when you're building a business that you feel passionate about, it's difficult. It takes time. You have to be prepared to put absolutely everything on the line. And that's not just a personal individual endeavor. I'm fortunate that I have a co-founder, but you're taking your family with you. My partner, my children, we lived on, relatively speaking, not a lot of money in the early years.
Had you any idea of the level of intensity? I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs at the early stages of their business. They're seeking advice, and nearly every one of them, I say to them, just prepare for a journey, a level of intensity that you have no idea how much is coming, because one good meeting and you'll live on cloud nine for a month.
Yeah.
One bad meeting and you wonder whether or not you can survive, and you need to go home and tell your wife that you're going to go to the bank again. Were you ready for that? We all know that there's some sacrifices involved, but were you ready for that level of intensity?
I don't think you can anticipate it at all, actually. And I think the thing that you are aware of is this is very personal. The thing that you're doing is your belief that you're able to bring something to the market that is worthwhile, is better than what the options are, and you're totally vested, both financially, emotionally, where you've got that coming together of all of those aspects to engage you in the most energized way. And therefore, there are points where, yes, you're distraught and things aren't going well, and you have to take that on chin. But it's a very philosophical thing. You don't get many of these choices to make, do you? Because you're not here for that long. So I feel personally that I wouldn't have swapped it for anything. It's been the most rewarding but most demanding. But I feel as I'm living out my human existence in the very best way I can.
How do you leave a legacy? There's a thing that exists that employs people and has made a difference. You founded, created, and that is a legacy of kinds. Are you still as passionate 10 years on as you were? You can't be as passionate. Surely, it's going a little bit smooth at the edges.
I think the passion shifts a bit because in the very early years, you're literally living hand to mouth because you're trying to build up revenue. You have costs going out. Now we have a business that is thousands of times bigger than it was in year one. So I think the passion moves to looking at how are we able to make even bigger indentation into the industry, because we've gone past are these guys going to survive? Are they actually able to do the things that they say they can do? And we've time and time again proved benefits that are accruing from using our technology. So now we're thinking about how do we go bigger? And I'm really excited that for the first time ever, we'll be applying for, I think I get the pronunciation perhaps wrong, a patent, I think is how the US say it.
Yes.
We will be launching a world first. And I've also talked about a moonshot AI. And these things are very exciting. I never thought that we would be as prolific in some of the ideas and the way that we're thinking about things as we are today. Now we're into a whole series of other ways of thinking about how to help the insurance industry. And that's very, very exciting for the outlook for the next few years.
So we're here 10 years after we first met to talk about INSTANDA and InsTech. Have you got another 10 years in here?
Well, I was going to ask you the same question. Absolutely, I've got another 10 years. And I wonder maybe you and I might meet again in 10 years. It might not be you and I in person, maybe it's our avatars, but we will certainly be having another good conversation, because I think, like you, whilst you say you're contrary, you've made an amazing contribution to the insurance industry because you have tens of thousands of people engaged in InsTech. You've given a platform to so many people to talk about key issues. You've informed the industry, you've enlightened them, you've entertained them, and you've built so much up. You can't ever think that's going to stop because there's so much more to do. And in the same way, I feel the same, that INSTANDA has change some of the narrative in the industry. We used to talk about speed and getting things done quickly in weeks, and now we're recognizing it's bigger than that. It's about true organizational agility. But I feel, as I said earlier, we've achieved so much, but there is so much more yet to do. And I need all the help I can get from the great people I have, from our wonderful clients and our partners. So I'm very excited about the next 10 years. Yeah.
Any milestones, any things that you would like to pull out or that you'd like to discuss?
Well, from a personal standpoint, I can't give you quite a reason why, but I was on holiday, a skiing holiday with the family about 18 months ago. And it was one of my pathetic attempts to apologize to them for not being very present and all the hard work I've been doing, and I was away. But it was a holiday that was quite insightful in the sense that I discovered I wasn't getting pulled onto calls every day. The email traffic had reduced. And that had also coincided with 6 months prior to that, my father had passed away. And interestingly, my father was the one that had got me into motorsport and motor cars, and we'd been fortunate to have some sports cars when I was younger. So I'd always had this affinity with cars. So the two things came together, the business somehow or other not needing as much of me, and I decided to start motor racing. And that was at the beginning of last year. And that's a childhood ambition for me. I still don't have quite as much time as I would like to give to it, but I'm carrying on this year and I'm flying the flag for INSTANDA.
I think that's the mark of being a good CEO, isn't it? You look back now to the man who first started running INSTANDA to the man who's running it now. What other attributes do you think you have or skills that you've learned in that 10 years that makes you a better CEO?
I think the skills of a CEO are an ability to have an aspect of humility. And I think that's why the design for the platform is as good as it is, because we started from the premise the insurance industry and the professionals within it know more than and will always know more than we as humble technologists. And so our design was to give that power to the insurance professionals. And that humility, I think, as a CEO is something that is rarely spoken about because CEOs somehow have this almost cartoon-like image that they should know everything, they should be able to make all the decisions. That's far from the truth. You need a level of ability to take in information from outside and act on it and even listen to others and get the experts around you, whether that's people in the industry or the experts in our company, to be making the right decisions. And that's what I think I have been able to do. And I feel very proud that we've empowered our teams, empowered our clients to go on and do some really amazing things. So have I got better at that? I think my wife, who is like yourself, a Cambridge educated person who has a master's in child psychotherapy, would like to think that the last 10 years she's done a great job on making me a better person.
Sounds like she worked a lot harder when she was there than I did. I had other priorities, I'm afraid.